I opened my bank account and saw $200 million. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped my phone. This had to be a mistake. I'd only asked my new husband for $200 for groceries. See, I'd married him just 1 week ago. A complete stranger. I took my sister's place at the altar because she ran away 2 days before the wedding, calling him just a construction worker. Now that same sister was at my door, with a lawyer, screaming that I stole her life, demanding I split the money with her. My mother stood behind her, nodding in agreement. And my husband? He just looked at me and said, "It's time you knew the truth about who I really am." That's when everything changed. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Alicia Foster, and I'm 31 years old now. But this story starts 3 years ago, when I was 29 and living in a small town in Kansas with my mother and my younger sister, Madison. Our town was one of those places where everyone knew everyone else's business. The kind of place where you couldn't buy milk at the grocery store without running into at least 3 people who wanted to chat about the weather, the church bake sale, or whose daughter was getting married. We lived in my grandfather's old farmhouse on the edge of town. It wasn't much, the paint was peeling. The porch steps creaked, and the ancient air conditioning unit in the window struggled against the brutal Kansas summers. But it was ours. Or at least it had been Grandpa's before he passed. After Dad died, Mom raised the 3 of us on her own. My older brother Marcus had moved to Denver for work, so it was just Mom, Madison, and me rattling around in that old house. I worked the night shift at the 7-Eleven on Route 40, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 6 nights a week. The pay wasn't great, barely minimum wage, but it was steady. During the day, I'd come home, throw in a load of laundry, make breakfast for Mom and Madison, then try to sleep for a few hours before starting dinner prep. It wasn't the life I'd imagined for myself when I was younger. I'd wanted to go to college, maybe study business or accounting. But when Dad got sick, someone needed to help with the medical bills. Then, after he passed, someone needed to help with the funeral costs and the mortgage and Madison's tuition at the community college. That someone was always me. Madison was different from me. She was the pretty one, the popular one. She had friends from her college classes, went out on weekends, talked about moving to Chicago or maybe even New York someday. She wanted more than our small town could offer, and honestly, I didn't blame her. That's why, when Mom's friend suggested Madison meet Jake Harrison, it seemed like a good opportunity. Jake was 30, stable, and according to Mom's friend, a real gentleman who doesn't drink or gamble. They met 3 times before agreeing to the marriage. It was fast, but that's how things sometimes worked in our community. When you're ready to settle down, why waste time? The wedding was planned for early June. Mom put down deposits she couldn't really afford. She bought Madison a beautiful dress on a payment plan. She ordered flowers, booked the chapel, arranged for catering. All of it was stretching our already thin finances to the breaking point. I tried to help where I could. I picked up extra shifts. I made the decorations myself, spending my few free hours with hot glue guns and ribbon. But 3 days before the wedding, Madison had her meltdown. "I can't do this," she sobbed to her friends on the phone, loud enough that I could hear from the kitchen. "He works construction. Do you know how embarrassing that is? Everyone's going to judge me." I wanted to tell her that honest work wasn't embarrassing, that Jake seemed like a kind man from the few times I'd seen him, that maybe, just maybe, a stable life with a good person was worth more than impressing her friends. But Madison was 26 and sure she knew what she wanted. Or rather, sure she knew what she didn't want. When she packed her bag and left that evening, Mom was devastated. The shame of calling off a wedding at the last minute, of having to return gifts, of facing Jake's family, it was too much. That's when Mom came to me with the request I'd been dreading. Alicia, honey, I need to ask you something. I knew what was coming. In our community, it wasn't unheard of for sisters to substitute for each other in arranged marriages. It was old-fashioned, maybe even outdated, but in desperate circumstances. Jake's mother says he's willing, Mom continued quietly. He says since he never really knew Madison anyway, it doesn't matter. They need someone to fulfill the arrangement. I looked at my mother's tired face, at the bills stacked on the kitchen counter, at the half-finished wedding decorations in boxes by the door. Okay, I heard myself say. I'll do it. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Are you sure? Was I sure? No. Was I terrified? Absolutely. Did I have a choice? Not really. It's fine, Mom. Really? The wedding took place the following Saturday at the small chapel on Elm Street. There were maybe 40 people there, mostly relatives and neighbors. Madison's friends were notably absent, which was probably for the best. I wore Madison's dress, which I'd had to pin in several places because she was taller and curvier than me. In the mirror, I looked like a child playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. Jake Harrison stood at the altar in a suit that looked slightly too tight across his broad shoulders. His face was tanned from working outdoors, his hands rough when they took mine for the ceremony. When we made eye contact during our vows, I saw something unexpected in his expression. Apology, maybe, or recognition that we were both trapped in this strange situation. I do, I said when prompted. I do, he echoed. And just like that, I was married to a stranger. The reception was brief. People ate, made polite conversation, and left. Jake's mother, Carol, was gracious but formal. His father had passed away years ago, I learned. He had a younger sister who eyed me curiously, but didn't say much. By 6 p.m., I was in Jake's pickup truck with my single suitcase, heading toward Chicago, where he apparently lived and worked. The drive was mostly silent. The apartment's small, Jake finally said as we hit the highway. It's a 5th-floor walk-up in Bridgeport. Gets hot in summer. Will that be okay? It's fine, I assured him. What else could I say? If you need anything, just let me know. Thank you. That was the extent of our first real conversation as husband and wife. We arrived at his apartment building around 9 p.m. Bridgeport was a working-class neighborhood, the kind with corner stores and laundromats, and people sitting on their stoops in the evening heat. The building was old brick, with a worn concrete stoop and mailboxes that looked like they'd been broken into more than once. True to his word, it was 5 flights up. By the 3rd floor, I was breathing hard. The apartment was tiny, maybe 600 square feet total. A small living room with a kitchenette, 1 bedroom, and a bathroom that had definitely seen better days. But it was clean, surprisingly clean for a bachelor's place. The dishes were done, the floor swept. Even the bathroom mirror was smudged. You can take the bedroom, Jake said, setting my suitcase inside. I'll sleep on the couch. You don't have to. It's fine. You must be exhausted. There are clean towels in the bathroom cabinet. He closed the bedroom door gently, leaving me alone. I sat on the edge of the bed, a full size with plain blue sheets, and looked around. The room was sparse. A dresser, a small closet, a window that looked out onto the brick wall of the next building. No pictures on the walls, no personal items except for a few books on the dresser. This was my new life. I thought about Madison, probably at her friend's apartment in Chicago right now, maybe out at a bar or club, free and happy. I thought about Mom. alone in that old farmhouse. I thought about the 7-Eleven, where I'd never work another shift, about the small town life I'd left behind. And I cried, not sobbing, just quiet tears running down my face as I sat in this strange room, married to a man whose last name I now shared, but whose favorite color I didn't know. Eventually, exhaustion won. I changed into my pajamas, washed my face, and crawled into bed. Through the thin walls, I could hear the muted sound of the television from the living room. Jake was still awake. I wondered what he was thinking. If he regretted this arrangement. If he wished Madison had stayed. If he was angry at being stuck with the plain sister instead of the pretty one. I fell asleep with those thoughts swirling in my mind, not knowing that my life was about to change in ways I couldn't possibly imagine. I woke up the next morning to the smell of eggs and coffee. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then reality crashed back the strange bedroom. The sounds of Chicago traffic outside. The fact that I was now Mrs. Alicia Harrison, married to a man I barely knew. I checked my phone. 9:30 a.m. Back home, I would have been finishing breakfast prep for Mom and Madison by now, probably starting on the laundry. I got dressed quickly, feeling awkward about emerging from the bedroom. What was the protocol here? How did you interact with your brand new husband the morning after your wedding that wasn't really a wedding? Jake was in the kitchenette, scrambling eggs in a small pan. He'd changed out of his wedding clothes into jeans and a t-shirt. He looked more relaxed, more like a regular person and less like a groom at an awkward ceremony. "Good morning," he said without turning around. "Hope you like eggs. I'm not much of a cook, but I can manage breakfast. Eggs are perfect." "Thank you." He plated simple breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and coffee. We sat at the small table by the window, the morning sun creating a stripe of light across the worn linoleum floor. "I have to head to work soon," Jake said between bites. "There's a project in the South Loop that needs finishing. I should be back around 6 or 7 tonight." "Okay. Is there anything you need me to do? Grocery shopping or whatever you think we need? I usually just eat simple stuff, but feel free to get whatever you want." After Jake left, I found myself alone in the apartment for the first time. I explored more thoroughly in the daylight. The refrigerator contained eggs, milk, butter, and some wilted lettuce. The cabinets held pasta, rice, canned soup, and not much else. The guy clearly lived on bachelor basics. I made a mental list of things we'd need: fresh vegetables, meat for dinners, proper cooking supplies. The problem was, I had almost no money. My last paycheck from the 7-Eleven had been small, and after giving Mom money for her bills, I had maybe $300 to my name. I spent most of the day cleaning and organizing. I washed all the dishes, scrubbed the bathroom, swept and mopped the floors. It felt good to do something productive, something familiar. By late afternoon, I knew I needed to address the grocery situation. At 4 p.m., I finally worked up the courage to text Jake. "Hi, this is Alicia. I need to do some grocery shopping. Could I borrow about $200? I'll keep track and pay you back when I can." I stared at the message for 5 minutes before hitting send. It felt humiliating to ask for money from this stranger I'd just married. But what choice did I have? His response came 20 minutes later. "Sure. What's your bank account number?" I sent him my information, expecting maybe a Venmo transfer or a check when he got home. Then my phone buzzed with a text alert from my bank. "Deposit confirmed $200 million. I stared at the screen, blinked, looked again. $200 million? That couldn't be right. It had to be a mistake. Maybe the bank's system glitched. Maybe someone accidentally hit too many zeros. I opened my banking app with shaking hands, refreshed the page. The number didn't change. Current balance 200,342. My heart hammered in my chest. I tried to breathe normally and failed. With trembling fingers, I called Jake. Hello? His voice had background noise machinery, people talking. Jake, hi, I just checked my account and there's a problem with the deposit. A problem? He sounded calm, like we were discussing what to have for dinner. It says $200 million. Yeah, that's right. I waited for him to laugh, to say he was joking. He didn't, but I asked for $200. For groceries. I know, but I figured if we're starting a life together, you shouldn't have to worry about money. The $200 million is for you to use however you need. Set up the house, buy whatever you want, handle any bills that come up. My mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. Alicia, you still there? How? Where did you? I don't understand. It's a long story. I'll explain everything when I get home tonight. But that money is clean, don't worry. It's not from anything illegal. But you work construction. How do you have? I really will explain tonight, I promise. Look, I have to get back to work. Just, please don't tell anyone about this yet, okay? Not your family, not friends. Can you do that for me? Okay. Yes. I won't tell anyone. Thank you. See you tonight. The call ended. I sat on the couch for probably an hour, just staring at my phone. $200 million? In my account. From a man who wore work boots and lived in a fifth-floor walk-up. None of it made sense. Was he a criminal? Had he robbed a bank? Was this drug money? Was I now an accessory to something illegal? But he'd sounded so calm, so normal. And he'd promised to explain. I tried to distract myself. I attempted to watch TV, but couldn't focus. I tried reading one of the books from the bedroom dresser, but the words blurred together. Finally, around 6:30, I heard his key in the lock. Jake came in looking exactly as he had that morning work clothes, dusty boots, a slight sheen of sweat on his forehead. He carried a paper bag from a local deli. Brought sandwiches, he said, setting the bag on the counter. Figured you might not have had time to cook. Jake, we need to talk about the money. I know. Let me shower first, okay? Give me 10 minutes. He disappeared into the bathroom. I heard the water start and paced the small living room, my mind racing with possibilities. When he emerged 15 minutes later, he was wearing clean jeans and a button-down shirt. His hair was damp and combed back. He looked different, more polished somehow. Okay, he said, sitting on the couch and gesturing for me to join him. I owe you an explanation. Please. He took a deep breath. My maternal grandfather owned a construction company. A big one, Harrison and Sons Construction. You might have heard of it? I shook my head. Well, it's one of the larger regional firms in the Midwest. Grandpa built it from nothing, and by the time he retired, it was worth over $1 billion. My eyes widened. When he died 5 years ago, he left most of his estate in a trust for me. But there were conditions. Conditions? He wanted me to learn the business from the ground up. Really learn it, not just sit in an office. So the terms of the trust were that I had to work in construction, actual hands-on construction, until I turned 35. Live on that salary alone, no touching the trust fund. Only then could I access the full inheritance and take over the company. The pieces started falling into place. So you've been working as a regular construction worker for the last 7 years, yeah? I started right after college. Learned carpentry, electrical, plumbing, everything. I wanted to actually understand the work, you know? Grandpa was right about that. But the 200 million is from the trust. I can access some of it now for living expenses, especially since I'm married. The trust allows for appropriate accommodation and support of spouse and family. Once I turn 35 next year, I get the rest, and I'm supposed to take over as CEO of Harrison and Sons. I sat back, overwhelmed. So you're not actually a struggling construction worker? Well, I am actually a construction worker. I just happen to also be rich. He gave a wry smile. The struggling part was intentional. Does Madison know? Did she know any of this? No. No one does except my family. My mom, my sister. When your mom's friend set up the match, we intentionally kept my background quiet. I've learned the hard way that people treat you differently when they know you have money. He looked down at his hands, calloused, rough, the hands of someone who worked with them daily. I had a girlfriend once a few years ago. When she found out about the trust fund, everything changed. Suddenly, she wanted to get married right away, wanted me to buy her things, wanted to use my money to start businesses. It wasn't about me anymore, just about what I had. The sadness in his voice was real. So when Madison ran and you agreed to take her place, I thought, maybe this is a test. Maybe you're different. And when I gave you that money, I wanted to see what you'd do with it. And what did I do? You didn't do anything. You didn't suddenly start shopping online or calling your friends to brag. You just sat there looking terrified. Despite everything, I laughed. It came out shaky, almost hysterical. Of course I was terrified. I thought you were a drug dealer or something. Now Jake laughed too. I probably should have led with the grandfather story. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of this revelation settling between us. So what happens now? I asked quietly. Now? Now we figure out how to actually be married, I guess. I go to work both at the construction site and starting to transition into the company office. You do whatever you want. Go back to school if you want. Start a business, stay home, get a job, whatever makes you happy. Just like that? Just like that. He reached over and took my hand gently. Alicia, I know this started as a weird arrangement, but I meant what I said in those vows. I want to make this work. No pressure, no expectations, except that we're honest with each other. Can we do that? I looked at our joined hands, his rough and scarred, mine small and pale in comparison. I can try, I said. That's all I'm asking. That night, we talked for hours. About his grandfather, about his years working construction, about his plans for the company. I told him about my family, about my dad's death, about working nights at the 7-Eleven. We were still essentially strangers, but at least now we were strangers who were being honest with each other. As I lay in bed that night, I thought about the massive number in my bank account. Money I'd never dreamed of having. Money that could solve every problem my family had ever faced. But Jake had asked me not to tell anyone yet. And I'd promised. I just hoped I could keep that promise. If you're enjoying Alicia's story, please hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Give this video a like if you're invested in this story, and drop a comment telling me, would you have taken Madison's place at that wedding? The first month of marriage was strange, but not in the way I'd expected. Jake kept his word about everything. He continued going to work at construction sites most days, coming home dusty and tired. But a few days a week, I'd notice him leaving in dress clothes instead of work gear, carrying a briefcase instead of his tool belt. Office days, he'd explain briefly, transitioning into the company work. Meanwhile, he encouraged me to use the money however I wanted. The very first thing was pay off Mom's debts. The credit cards she'd maxed out for Madison's wedding, the medical bills from Dad's illness that we'd been paying $20 a month on for years, even the mortgage on the farmhouse. I did it all anonymously through a lawyer Jake connected me with, setting it up as if it were a grant or something. I couldn't bring myself to tell Mom the truth yet, not when Jake had asked me to keep quiet. But I sent her an extra $300 a month for living expenses, claiming Jake was giving me an allowance, and I wanted to share it. She accepted gratefully, asking fewer questions than I'd feared. The apartment gradually changed. I bought kitchen supplies, proper cookware instead of Jake's single-scratched pan. I got fresh curtains for the windows, a comfortable rug for the living room. Nothing extravagant. I still couldn't wrap my head around having unlimited money, just enough to make the place feel like a home. Jake noticed and seemed pleased. "It looks good," he'd say, or, "I like what you did with the kitchen." We developed a routine. I'd wake up with him, make breakfast while he got ready for work. He'd come home around 7, and we'd have dinner together. Afterward, we'd watch TV or talk, learning little things about each other. His favorite color blue, his coffee preference black, no sugar. The fact that he was allergic to cats but loved dogs. It wasn't romantic, but it was comfortable. We were becoming friends, I realized. Actual friends. 2 months in, Jake suggested I take some online classes. "You mentioned wanting to study business once," he reminded me. "Why not start now?" So I enrolled in online accounting courses through a community college. It felt good to be learning again, to have something to focus on besides cleaning and cooking. Life was peaceful, almost too peaceful. I should have known it wouldn't last. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon in late August. I'd just finished a particularly challenging homework assignment and was feeling proud of myself when my phone rang. "Mom." "Hi, Mom. How are—" "Alicia, we need to talk about something." Her voice was strange, tight, almost calculating. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, but Madison's back. She came home yesterday." My stomach dropped. Madison hadn't contacted me once since running away from the wedding. Not a call, not a text, nothing. "Oh, how is she?" She's been having a hard time. The jobs in Chicago didn't work out. She's been staying with friends, but—" Mom trailed off. "Alicia, she heard something. From a friend of hers who works in real estate." "Oh, no." "What did she hear?" "That Jake isn't who we thought he was. That he comes from money. A lot of money." My hand tightened on the phone. "Mom, Is it true? Does your husband have money?" I couldn't lie. I'd never been good at lying to my mother. "Yes," I said quietly. "He does." The silence that followed was deafening. "How much?" "I can't really discuss." "Alicia, how much?" I closed my eyes. "A lot, Mom. His grandfather left him a trust fund. It's substantial." "I see." Her voice had gone cold. "And you didn't think to mention this to your family?" "Jake asked me not to tell anyone yet. He has his reasons." "His reasons? What about your family's reasons? What about Madison?" "What about Madison? She's the one who ran away. She didn't know. If she'd known, she never would have—" Mom stopped herself. But I understood perfectly. If Madison had known Jake was rich, she would have stayed. She would have married him without a second thought. "Mom, it doesn't matter now. I'm married to him. We need to talk about this properly. Your sister deserves to hear the truth. Can we come visit this weekend?" Everything in me wanted to say no, but I couldn't. They were still my family. "I'll ask Jake," I said weakly. "We'll drive up Saturday. I'm sure he won't mind." She hung up before I could respond. That evening, I told Jake about the call. He listened quietly, his expression unreadable. "They can come," he said finally. "But Alicia, I need you to know something. People change when they find out about money. Family especially. Are you prepared for that?" "They're my family," I said, though doubt was already creeping in. "They'll understand." Jake didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue. Saturday arrived too quickly. Mom and Madison showed up at 2 p.m. in Mom's old sedan. I buzzed them up, my heart pounding, as I listened to their footsteps on the stairs. Madison looked different. Thinner, tired, her usually perfect makeup minimal. But her eyes were sharp and calculating when she looked around our small apartment. "This is it?" she said. "I thought with all that money." "Madison," Mom said warningly. But I could see her thinking the same thing. We sat in the living room, awkward and tense. Jake was out at a construction site, but had promised to come home early. "So," Madison said, not bothering with small talk, "you married Rich." "I married Jake," I corrected. "His money isn't—" "Isn't what? Isn't important? Come on, Alicia. Don't act like you didn't know. I didn't know when I married him." He told me afterward. "How convenient." Madison's laugh was bitter. "You always were Mom's favorite. Now you get everything." "That's not fair," I protested. "You chose to leave. I took your place because I didn't want a construction worker. If I'd known he was a millionaire." "Multi-millionaire," Mom corrected quietly. "From what I've learned, the Harrison Family Trust is worth over $1 billion. They'd done their homework. Of course they had." "That's Jake's family money," I said firmly. "It has nothing to do with me." "You're his wife," Madison snapped. "Of course it has to do with you. You're going to be rich, and what about us? What about the family that actually supported you all these years?" "Supported me? I worked night shifts to help pay our bills. And now you don't have to work at all, do you?" "While I'm back home, broke, with no job prospects." The door opened. Jake came in, still in his work clothes, and stopped short when he saw Madison and Mom. "Hello," he said carefully. "Mrs. Foster." "Madison." "Mr. Harrison," Mom said, standing. "Or should I say Mr. Harrison of Harrison and Sons Construction?" Jake's jaw tightened. "Yes, that's my family's company." "Why didn't you tell us?" Madison demanded. "When we arranged this marriage, why didn't you mention you were worth millions?" "Because I wanted someone who would marry me, not my bank account." "That's a luxury you can afford," Madison shot back. "What about the rest of us? You let Alicia take my place, knowing she'd get access to all that money." "Alicia didn't know about the money when she married me," Jake said firmly. "I told her afterward. And honestly, what I have or don't have is between me and my wife." "Your wife is my sister," Madison said, her voice breaking. "She took something that should have been mine." "You gave it up," I said, finding my voice. "You walked away, remember?" "I didn't know." "So you would have stayed if you'd known he was rich?" "That's what you're saying?" Madison's silence was answer enough. Mom stepped forward. "Jake, surely you can understand our position. Madison made a mistake, yes, but she's family. Alicia's family. We should all benefit from this good fortune." "Benefit how?" Jake asked coolly. "Well, Madison has student loans. She needs a place to stay while she looks for work. Some financial support would help her get back on her feet." "And what about Alicia?" Jake asked. "What did Alicia get from the family when she was working night shifts to pay your bills?" Mom's face flushed. "That's different. Family helps family." "Family helps family," Jake repeated. "But only when there's money involved, apparently." The room went silent. "I think you should leave," I said quietly. Alicia, Mom started. No, Jake is right. Madison, you're only here because you found out about the money. Mom, you never cared about my happiness until you thought there was something in it for you. I took Madison's place at that wedding to save our family's reputation, to save you from debt, and I didn't ask for anything in return. But now you have everything, Madison whispered. I have a husband who treats me with respect. That's what I have. The money is. It's just money. Even as I said it, I knew how hollow it sounded to them. How could I explain that I'd been genuinely happy before I knew about the money? That Jake's kindness, his willingness to slowly build something real with me, mattered more than any number in a bank account. I need you both to leave, I said again. And don't come back unless you're ready to accept that this is my life now. Not yours. Mine. Mom gathered her purse with shaking hands. Madison stared at me like I was a stranger. You've changed, Madison said. No, I replied. I just stopped pretending to be someone I'm not. After they left, I collapsed on the couch and cried. Jake sat beside me silently, his presence steady and solid. I'm sorry, he said finally. You warned me. You said people change when they find out about money. Doesn't make it hurt less. He was right about that. That night, lying in bed, I thought about my family, about Mom, who'd raised 3 kids alone and struggled every day, about Madison, who'd always dreamed of something bigger than our small town could offer, about Marcus, my brother, who I hadn't even told yet because I knew it would complicate things. Money changed people. But more than that, it revealed who they really were. And I was learning that maybe, just maybe, my real family wasn't the one I was born into. Maybe it was the one I was choosing to build. The weeks after my family's visit were difficult. Mom called twice, both times asking if I'd reconsidered helping Madison financially. I held firm, explaining that while I'd helped with Mom's debts, which she hadn't even properly thanked me for, I wasn't going to fund Madison's lifestyle. She's your sister, Mom said the second time she called. And you're my mother, I replied. But you've never asked me how I'm doing. Just what I can do for Madison. She hung up after that. I cried, but I didn't call her back. Jake noticed, of course. He'd always been observant, even in those first awkward weeks of marriage. You okay? He asked one evening, finding me staring out the window at the Chicago skyline. I don't know, I admitted. I keep thinking, maybe I should just give them some money. Make this whole thing go away. Jake came to stand beside me. You could, but would it actually make it go away? Or would it just be the first of many requests? I knew he was right. If I gave in now, there would always be something else. Another emergency, another need, another demand. How did you deal with it? I asked. When people found out about your money, I mostly didn't tell them, he said with a wry smile. That's why I kept working construction, lived in this place. The fewer people who knew, the fewer people who could disappoint me. That's a lonely way to live. It was. That's why. He paused, choosing his words carefully. That's why I'm glad it's you, Alicia. You could have demanded anything when I gave you that money. A mansion, cars, jewelry. But you paid off your mom's debt and bought a dish rack. A really nice dish rack, admittedly, but still. I laughed despite myself. It had great reviews. I know. I saw your search history. He grinned. You spent an hour comparing dish racks. That's when I knew for sure you were different. Something shifted between us in that moment. The friendship we'd been building felt deeper, more solid. Jake, I said carefully, what are we doing here? Really? What do you mean? I mean, we're married, but we're basically roommates. You sleep on the couch. We don't. I felt my face heat up. We don't act like a real married couple. Jake was quiet for a long moment. I didn't want to pressure you. This whole situation was already strange enough without adding expectations. What if I wanted there to be expectations? His eyes met mine, surprised. Do you? Did I? 3 months ago, I would have said no. Jake was a stranger I'd married out of obligation. But now he was the person who brought me coffee in the morning exactly how I liked it, who asked about my online classes and actually listened to the answers, who fixed the leaky faucet without being asked, and left encouraging notes on my accounting homework. Now he was. Jake. My Jake. Yes, I said simply. That night, Jake didn't sleep on the couch. The next morning, I woke up in his arms for the first time, and it felt right. Natural. Like this was how it should have been all along. Morning, Jake murmured, his voice rough with sleep. Morning. I should probably get ready for work. Probably. Neither of us moved. Eventually, reality intruded. Jake had a site meeting, and I had a virtual class. But something fundamental had changed. We weren't just two people trapped in an arrangement anymore. We were actually building something real. Over the next few months, our life together deepened. Jake started taking me to some of his office meetings at Harrison & Sons. The employees were surprised at first, their future boss bringing his wife to work. But Jake was clear about his intentions. Alicia's smart with numbers, he'd say. I want her opinion on things. The accounting classes I'd been taking online were paying off. I could look at budget reports and see patterns, identify potential problems. Jake's grandfather's company was successful, but there were inefficiencies that a fresh perspective could spot. You're good at this. Sarah, the company's CFO, told me after one meeting where I'd suggested a different approach to tracking project costs. Have you thought about working here officially? I looked at Jake, who gave me an encouraging nod. Maybe, I said. I'd need to finish my degree first. We could help with that, Sarah said. The company has an education assistance program. It felt surreal. A year ago, I was working night shifts at a 7-Eleven, wondering if I'd ever be able to afford community college. Now I was being recruited by a major construction firm. But the strangest part? It felt earned. Not because of who I'd married, but because of what I was learning, what I was capable of. Jake noticed my confidence growing and seemed pleased by it. You're not the same person who showed up at that wedding, he observed one evening. Is that a good thing? It's a great thing. You were always smart and capable, Alicia. You just needed the chance to show it. In December, nearly 6 months after our wedding, we moved to a larger apartment. Still in Bridgeport, Jake wanted to stay connected to the neighborhood he'd lived in during his construction years, but a much nicer place. 2 bedrooms, updated kitchen, a balcony with a view of the city. I decorated it carefully, making it ours. Photos of us together started appearing on the walls. A picture from a Harrison & Sons Company picnic, where Jake's arm was around my waist. A candid shot Sarah had taken of us reviewing blueprints, our heads bent together in concentration. We looked like what we were a real couple. For Christmas, Jake surprised me with an admission letter to DePaul University's business program. You applied for me? I asked, stunned. I submitted the application, he admitted. But the acceptance was all you. Your online grades were excellent. I started classes in January, diving into my studies with an enthusiasm I hadn't felt in years. Jake supported me completely, adjusting his schedule so he could drive me to evening classes, helping me study for exams. Even though business theory wasn't his strong suit, you're going to have a better education than me, he joked one night while quizzing me on accounting principles. You learned by doing, I pointed out. That's worth more than any degree. We make a good team then. We did. That was the thing. Somewhere between that awkward first breakfast and now, we'd become partners. Real partners. In March, 9 months after our wedding, we went back to Kansas for the first time. Not to my hometown, I wasn't ready for that yet, but to visit Jake's mom, Carol, who lived in Overland Park. She welcomed me warmly, very different from that formal woman at the wedding. "I'm so glad Jake found you," she said, hugging me. "He seems happier than I've seen him in years." Over dinner, Carol told me stories about Jake's childhood, about his grandfather who'd built Harrison and Sons from nothing. "Dad was tough," she said. "He believed in earning what you got. That's why he set up the trust the way he did. He didn't want Jake to become one of those spoiled rich kids who never worked a day in their lives." "Jake's definitely not that," I said. "No, he's not. And I think a lot of that is thanks to you." "Me? I didn't do anything. You treated him like a person, not a bank account," Carol said simply. "You have no idea how rare that is." That night, in the guest room at Carol's house, Jake pulled me close. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For giving this a real chance. When you showed up at that wedding instead of Madison, I thought, well, I thought it would be awkward and uncomfortable, and we'd just tolerate each other. I never expected to actually fall in love with you." My breath caught. We'd said a lot of things to each other over the past months, but never that. "You love me?" "Yes." "Is that okay?" I kissed him instead of answering, pouring everything I felt into it. When we finally broke apart, I whispered, "I love you too." It was the truth. Somehow, impossibly, I'd fallen in love with the stranger I'd married. Spring came, and with it, changes. Jake's 35th birthday arrived in April. According to his grandfather's trust, this was the moment he could fully access his inheritance and officially take over as CEO of Harrison and Sons. The company threw a celebration, a formal dinner, at a nice hotel downtown. I wore a dress Jake had bought me, navy blue and elegant. I felt like a different person from the girl who'd worn Madison's too big wedding dress a year ago. "You look beautiful," Jake said, adjusting his tie in our bedroom mirror. "You clean up pretty well yourself." At the dinner, I met more of Jake's extended family, business associates, people who'd known his grandfather. Everyone was warm and welcoming, and I realized this was my life now. These were my people. Sarah found me near the end of the evening. "I wanted to tell you officially, the CFO position at Harrison and Sons will be opening up in about 2 years when I retire. If you're interested, the job is yours. Mine. But I'm still in school. You'll have your degree by then. And honestly, Alicia, you have an instinct for this that can't be taught. Plus, you understand both the office and the field side, just like Jake. That's invaluable." Thank you. I'll definitely think about it." On the drive home, I told Jake about Sarah's offer. "What do you think?" he asked. "Want to work with your husband? Sounds like a recipe for either success or disaster. Knowing us, probably success." He was right. We worked well together. We'd proven that over and over. In May, I got a text from an unknown number. "This is Madison. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time before showing Jake. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants to ignore it, but part of me still loves her," Jake finished. "She's your sister." "Of course you do." I met Madison for coffee at a neutral location, a Starbucks halfway between Chicago and our hometown. She looked better than the last time I'd seen her. Healthier, more put together. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup. "What did you want to talk about?" I wanted to apologize. Really apologize, not just because Mom told me to. She took a breath. When I ran from that wedding, I was scared. I was 26 and felt like my life was over before it started. Then, when I found out about the money, I was angry. At you, at Jake, at myself for making such a stupid mistake. Madison, let me finish. Please. She looked down. I spent the last year working crappy retail jobs, living in a cramped apartment with 3 roommates, barely making rent. And the whole time I kept thinking, if I'd just stayed, that would be my life. But I realized something. That wouldn't have been my life. Because I would have been there for the wrong reasons. What do you mean? I would have married Jake for his money. I wouldn't have cared about him as a person. I wouldn't have become partners with him like you did. I would have just been a trophy wife, I guess. Spending his money and complaining, it wasn't enough. She met my eyes. You deserved what you got, Alicia. Not because you took my place, but because you actually built something real. You didn't know about the money, and when you found out, you didn't change. That's why it worked for you and would never have worked for me. I felt tears prick my eyes. That's actually really mature of you to say. I'm trying to grow up. Slowly. She gave a small smile. I got a real job, by the way. Assistant manager at a bookstore. It's not glamorous, but I actually like it. And I'm taking some online classes too. Business management. That's great, Madison. Really? I'm not asking for money or anything, she added quickly. I wanted you to know I'm sorry. And I'm trying to be better. We talked for another hour, really talked. About her job, my school, Jake, our family. It wasn't perfect. There was still awkwardness, still hurt feelings that would take time to heal. But it was a start. When I told Jake about it that evening, he smiled. How do you feel? Lighter, I realized. Like I don't have to carry around all that resentment anymore. Good. Life's too short to stay angry at family. Summer arrived, hot and humid. Jake and I spent weekends exploring Chicago neighborhoods we'd never visited, restaurants we'd never tried. We were making memories, building a life that was truly ours. One evening in July, sitting on our balcony watching the sunset, Jake said, I've been thinking about something. What? Kids. Do you want them? I'd been thinking about it too, actually. Yes. Eventually. Do you? Yeah. He took my hand. Not right away. I want you to finish school first. Get settled in your career if that's what you want. But someday sounds good. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights come on one by one. Alicia. Thank you. For what? For saying yes that day. For taking a chance on this weird situation. For becoming the best thing that ever happened to me. I leaned my head on his shoulder. You know what's funny? I used to think Madison running away was the worst thing that could have happened. But now, I think it might have been the best thing. Because it led me here. To you. To this life. Jake kissed the top of my head. Funny how things work out. Yeah. Funny. As I sat there, watching the sunset with my husband, my real husband, not just on paper, but in every way that mattered, I thought about the girl I'd been a year ago. Working night shifts, living in her mother's house, thinking her life was already decided. She would never have believed this was possible. But it was. It really was. It's been 2 years since that strange wedding day in Kansas. I'm 31 now, and my life is almost unrecognizable from what it was. I graduated from DePaul last month with my bachelor's degree in business administration. Jake threw me a party, nothing too extravagant, just close friends and family. Carol was there, beaming with pride. Sarah from Harrison and Sons came, already treating me like a colleague rather than just the boss's wife. Even Marcus, my brother, flew in from Denver, and Madison came too. Our relationship has been slowly healing. She calls every few weeks now, and we actually talk about her life, not just what she wants from me. She got promoted to store manager at her bookstore. She's dating someone, a teacher she met at a community theater production. She sounds happy, genuinely happy. I'm proud of you, she told me at the graduation party, and I could tell she meant it. Mom is complicated. We're in contact, but there's still distance. She struggles with the fact that I have so much when she worked so hard for so many years. I get it. It can't be easy watching your daughter suddenly have all the things you sacrificed for. But I continue sending her money each month, not as much as she probably wants, but enough that she can live comfortably. I've offered to buy her a new house, but she insists on staying in Grandpa's old farmhouse. It's home, she says simply. Maybe someday she'll fully accept the way things turned out. Or maybe she won't. Either way, I've made peace with it. Jake officially took over as CEO of Harrison and Sons Construction after his birthday, and true to his word, he still spends time on construction sites. He says it keeps him grounded, reminds him why the company exists. The employees love him for it. There's been a noticeable shift in company culture. People feel valued, heard. Projects are more efficient. Safety has improved. Worker satisfaction is up. Jake's grandfather would be proud. And me? I start as assistant CFO next month. Sarah's training me to eventually take over her position when she retires. It's terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. You're going to be great, Jake assures me regularly. What if I mess up? Then you'll fix it. That's what you do. He's right. That is what I do. The girl who used to work night shifts at a 7-Eleven and accept whatever life handed her, she's gone. In her place is someone who makes decisions, takes chances, believes in her own capabilities.